Hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today is going to be part 2 in my food storage system video series. Now, one of the things I just thought about as I was doing this that probably should have been in part 1 is the construction of these cabinets. Now, you can go down to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy cabinets, and they're not cheap. But for me, it was only like $100 extra for this pile of cabinets I got here than what I would have paid if I had bought them from Lowe's or Home Depot. And those would have been made of particle board, and they would not have fit perfectly to the edge. And even though the guy that did these for me is no longer with us, and I miss him dearly, because there's a lot of stuff I need done, and I can't really afford anybody else. There are a lot of guys out there, they're called jacklegs. They're not really jacklegs. They're very competent carpenters and such, but they're just trying to work under the radar. And that was a deal with the guy that did this for me. He wasn't paying Social Security. And I was always worried about what he was going to do when he got too old to work, but you know, he died way before he would have ever gotten his Social Security, so everything worked out okay. But there's a lot of guys out there like that. And so you can get, and this isn't like mahogany or oak, it's just pine, but I promise you, solid pine is 1,000 times better than particle board. Now, if you notice, there's a lot of stuff on top, got a lot of stuff inside, and before I shoved all of that in there, I made a point of walking around on those and kind of testing it to see if it felt mushy, and it didn't. It feels solid. Now, I've got some work I've got to do up there, and I'm kind of debating how I want to do it, if I just want to climb a ladder or if I want to get back on top of them cabinets. But if I get on top of those cabinets to do it, the first thing I'm going to have to do is take all this food out, because I suspect that if you added up everything that I got in these cabinets, including all the pans that are on top, that's well over 300 pounds. You know, that's a really big person. And if I get up there, that's like 2 really big people, which I'm not comfortable with. I suspect that it would take the weight because it's just, this is all really well built. But honestly, there's no way I would climb back up there without taking all that out first. And that looks like a lot of work. So we'll see how I handle that. Okay, anyway, today we're going to be talking about what's in the lower cabinets, not what's in the upper cabinets. So I've got to adjust my thingamajig down here. Anyway, I don't have survival food in one part of the house and regular food in another part of the house, because food is food. I don't believe in waste, and I don't believe in stockpiling things I don't like to eat. And I can promise you, like MREs do not last as long as plain old canned food off of Walmart's shelf. And so what I got down here, and this is mostly just paper towels and napkins. We use these shop towels for napkins because they're so cheap. And it keeps us from just burning through this kind of stuff here. But honestly, these kind of things, This kind of stuff does not last any longer than a paper towel. Paper towel, you know, they can make 1 million paper towels in a second. It probably takes them 5 minutes to make 1 million of these. They cost more. This requires cotton. A lot of times paper towels are just made out of, you know, any kind of plant fiber. It's not real high quality stuff, so they don't have to go clear a redwood forest to make it. But over here, basically all this is snacks, like crackers and cookies and my wasabi peas. I love these things. They're really, really expensive. I'll do a video one day about how to get these pretty cheap. But anyway, yeah, that's nothing but chips and crackers and potato chips in here. You know, that's not survival food, but tell you what, whenever there's a hurricane, everybody runs to Walmart and stocks up. I mean, if you go down there the day before a hurricane, the lines go all around the store. And when you get over to the potato chip aisle, there ain't nothing, because that's kind of stuff you can eat without cooking. Oh, up here, I did go ahead and put in drawers for silverware, stuff like that. And that's basically what I use it for, although some of it is other kinds of things. Oh, let's get back over here now. One of the things that I was really particular with when I had these cabinets built was measurements. Now, as I was trying to figure out what I was going to do down here, I knew I wanted drawers on top, and there was really no logic to making this space exactly the size of a 5-gallon bucket. And on top of that, I've learned since then that all 5-gallon buckets are a different size. Which reminds me, I need to show you something else. This is one of the crucial errors I made in my food storage system. Because if you're real particular, you're going to probably do the same thing, and then later you're going to be disappointed. I had 2 cans sitting around, and I wanted to make sure that I could stack 2 cans on each shelf. And so, if you notice, this cheddar cheese can fits like that, but obviously, Vienna sausages don't, tuna fish don't, but a lot of cans don't. I just never realized that cans were a different size. See, 2 of these will not stack. Now, one of the things I do sometimes that will often work is stack a small can on top of a tall can, but I'm one of those real picky people, and so I don't like having my food mixed up. But there are places that you'll see occasionally where I have 2 different kinds of things stacked, and a lot of times just because it's something I don't eat that much of. So if I've got, this will stack like 4 or 5 deep, 6 deep, depending on the can. Sometimes when I've got something I don't like that much, I'll put all the big ones on the bottom, and then I'll get something else I don't like that much that's in little cans and put it on top. That way I don't just, because I'm one of them kind of people that if I don't like something, I'll get enough of it to fill the space just because it looks good. All right, back down to my buckets. Ah, yes, that's better, don't you think? Anyway, down here, big bulk items. In particular, and I'll show you, talking about flour, rice, pasta, and beans. I'm going to tell you, there are things that you could purchase in bulk that you really don't need to stockpile. Popcorn, cornmeal, and potato flakes. Now, we're talking about a lot of starches or beans, things that are like really basic to getting a bunch of calories, a lot of protein without taking up much space, long shelf life. But something I've learned is that potatoes out here in the swamp, we don't always use air conditioning, and it's pretty humid here. There's no way to long-term store potatoes unless you vacuum seal them or something, because they'll get moldy. So we only keep this. This is the complete, all the potatoes that we need. And the fact is, if you're in a survival situation, you may want to eat what you want every day. But the reality is that whether you want it or don't want it, if it's food, it's food. So we don't worry too much about that. Beans, I promise you, because it's difficult. It's difficult to rotate beans because they don't stack like a can. With a can, whenever you get new beans in a can in, you take all the old ones off the shelf, you put the new ones in there, you mark a date on it, and then everything's cool. With these, it's just too much work to try to keep everything in a certain order. There are probably beans in here, or in my other one, I keep a second bucket of these, that are 10 years old. I've never had bugs, but I've never had mold or anything like that. But I have been given beans that were probably older than that by my mom, and it had a weird taste to them because they've been around so long. And my mom uses a lot of cleaners in her house. She wears perfume, and you could taste that kind of chemical, floury flavor in the beans she gave me. So after I cooked them, I gave them away to the chickens. Oh, but beans are a very good long-term food storage item that does not require a whole lot of resources or logistics. You just put it in a bucket and stick. And you notice I don't even keep the lids all the way down. You know, these things are not airtight or watertight, so I don't even know if that helps. Pasta is another one that I've never had a problem with. Now, you can get what's called weavers, or well, let me just say this. People have different names for different things. And one of the things that will cause you problems is a beetle called the weevil. It's a little bitty, teeny tiny, like a black beetle. If you look at them up close, they look like an elephant because they have a long proboscis. But they have this moth, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's like Egyptian flower moth or grain moth or something like that. And they call those weevils, weevil moths, because they live in grain just like a weevil does. But it's like every place has their own name for them. I know this lady, she's probably like 90, and she told me she had weavers in her house. And I didn't know what that was until she showed me. It was just like these grain moths. She was probably just saying like weevils, but wasn't saying it right. But anyways, I have never, ever been able to figure out a way to get rid of weevils without using some kind of deadly chemical that's probably deadly to me. But weaver moths are real easy to kill. When you buy a bag of grain or a bag of rice, bag of flour, if you put it in your freezer for about 24 hours, or maybe 48 just to make sure, it will break any egg casings that you're going to have when you purchase your product. And those egg casings will never produce moths. So I have in the past come into my kitchen and the kitchen be filled with moths because a box of cereal or something would have a hatching. And those things can get into other grains and lay eggs, and then you have the same problem again a month later or whatever. But that's one of the reasons I don't keep popcorn. It's like I never get any bugs in any of this stuff, but since I've been freezing, I never ever get any moths. But it doesn't seem to kill the weevils. The little beetles seem to survive being frozen, and so you can get those. And I have never in my life purchased any product made of corn that didn't get weevils eventually. And so there's just no point in keeping corn around. I mean, popcorn, cornmeal, corn flour, grits. I keep grits, I keep cornmeal, I keep corn flour, but I do not keep very large. It's like this. You know, I just keep the normal amount that most people keep because I don't want my house full of weevils. All right, so we're going to put this up. And I got a special treat for you today. I'm going to actually show you all of the tricks to freezing rice and then transferring that rice to one of these buckets. Because I'm almost out of rice. I got a bag of it in the freezer though. One problem that I should tell you about is that when you're dragging your buckets out, you can actually rip the face off of your plywood. You know, I mean, this here is down near the bottom where nobody could see it, and if I just touched this up with paint, it would probably be problem fixed. But I remember when I did that, and I was really upset because, you know, I was all proud of these cabinets. This final cabinet is basically just a place where we put heavy jars and bottles, you know, things that we don't really want up there with our cans. And it's all of the stuff that we kind of use for a lot of things. Show you about what I'm talking about. This is vinegar. Lasts forever. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of these big bottles of vinegar in here. And it's not really a food. You know, there's a lot of people that absolutely swear that you can cure anything with vinegar. But my own experience is that it seems to help with indigestion. So at night, before I go to bed, I always take a full shot glass of vinegar and drink. And this will work. I don't know why. But they say that, you know, a lot of people, when they get indigestion, they'll take antacid. And that I guess that can help. But the reality is that the problem of indigestion is normally because you don't have enough acid. You're tasting acid because your body's trying to digest whatever late night snack you had. And it can't, because there isn't enough acid, and so as you get older, you have to add acid if you're going to do that at night. During the day, it's not normally a problem. You know, acid reflux or whatever is basically just if you lay down. You know, I've had times before when I had bad indigestion, and I could not lay down, but I could sleep sitting up. This will only help if you eat reasonably. You know, there are times when I'll just be getting ready for bed and start eat like a pizza. And there you know, this is not going to fix that. You know, if you're reasonable, this will fix it. But if you're just a late night pig, like I am, occasionally, that ain't going to fix it. All right, let's see what else is down here. I've always kind of just used the cheapest oil they make. But I've had a few friends that have told me that it's bad for you because it's a GMO product, and I'm not stupid. You know, I kind of know that GMO oil can't be as good as olive oil. You know, and olive oil is mentioned in the Bible quite a bit. Now, this one is different from this one, mostly because the bottle's a different color. But both of them are extra virgin. Both of them are 100% pure and all that. But I like to use olive oil in salads a lot. And see, this one that's in the dark green is actually rich flavor. Sometimes it'll say extra fruity. I like that olive flavor in a salad. This doesn't have much flavor at all. This is just like regular old oil. Now, a few other things I keep in here are coconut oil and lard, which are also oils. And they each serves their own purpose. You know, if you want to be healthy, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information out there about how lard is good for you, a lot about how bad it is for you, but also coconut oil is supposed to be really good for you. And so I try to incorporate a little bit of both of those into some things. If you notice, they're farther back in the cabinet because I don't use them that much. Diatomaceous earth is in here just because it's big. This is not the I don't think this is the one that you can digest. You know, you're supposed to get a certain kind of diatomaceous earth for people. Maybe it's harvested a different way or something, but I never eat it. But it's good for like getting rid of bugs in your hen house or whatever, because it's like little bitty chunks of broken glass on a microscopic level. Over here, we've got our mayonnaise. You know, you don't have to store mayonnaise in the fridge, and even after you open it, you don't have to. My grandmother always had a jar of mayonnaise in her cabinet. Never put it in the refrigerator. I keep down here my olives that we use in salads. I do keep always keep about I guess this is 35 pounds. Is that how they sell it? 4.5 gallons. Yeah, 35 pounds. That's regular cooking oil. Up here, just for emergencies, we have instant dry milk. I don't know why this envelope's out, but we'll stick it back in there. And that's good for when you don't... And it does taste good. I mean, it's not the same as drinking one of them big old gallons. This is going to shock you because this is not what most people think of as a prepper supply. I just happened to buy too much of this stuff, and then I forgot, and I bought more of it. But this is just all artificial sweeteners. And I try to keep some stevia in here. This is the stuff that I was using because it's supposed to be natural. But as of late, I really, really can't have any sugar, and I like sweet tea. I don't like unsweetened tea. Or I don't like unsweetened coffee either, and I've got a lot of that. I'll tell you something that might blow your mind. Now, I have fasted in the past. Maybe some of y'all know that. When I say fasted, I don't mean that I ate less food. I mean I went without food. And whenever you fast, you become dehydrated. So immediately you lose like 10 pounds. In 3 days, you lose 10 pounds. And it's not because you're not getting enough water. It's just because without the food, your body's not retaining as much water. So one of the things you'll have to do when you're fasting is drink. You have to be drinking constantly because you'll get this, as your body's doing its weird stuff, you'll get this taste in your mouth that's just horrendous. And even the feeling, you'll be like all day long. So you got to be constantly drinking. Well, I thought, if I'm fasting, not a big deal if I have tea and coffee. Just don't put any creamer in it because that's got calories, and just use artificial sweeteners. The thing is that I was drinking tea and coffee, and after I lost my initial 10 pounds, I kept drinking tea and coffee, and I never really had a big weight loss after that. It's like after 10 days, I was still only like 11 pounds lighter than I was when I started. But I decided later that that really wasn't a fast, because I'm putting, you know, the fast is supposed to be getting poison out of your body, so I'm putting poison in my body during a fast. So from then on, I never did it. But I've noticed that when I don't use the artificial sweeteners, that I lose a lot of weight. I think one time I went 34 and a half days without any food or any soda, any tea, any of that stuff. I think I lost 65 pounds, just like that. And it was, I guess, took me 34 days to gain 65 pounds back, because, you know, when you get off a fast, you don't think, well, you know what, I'll stick to a normal diet now. Now I can't fast because I'm too old and too sick. If I fasted, I'd probably die. And I'm not recommending anybody fast, because I did do some nerve damage to my back when I did that, and it took about a year for that to go. I had this tingling sensation in my back that was really, really, you know, just bothersome. And it took a year for that to go away. I think that's everything in these cabinets. I'll go ahead and show you a few more cabinets that I got, and then we'll show you how to put rice in a bucket. I guess the first thing I need to explain to you, when I said under there that I have another bucket of beans, I don't really feel like I need to stockpile that many beans. But being poor, there are 1,000 little programs all over the world for feeding poor people, and I always try to take advantage of them because I have limited resources. I don't feel any kind of obligation to the state to not take their food. Poor people are always, when you go get food or go to the hospital or go to the wherever, there's always somebody there giving you a bag of beans. So I've got a whole other 5-gallon bucket of beans just because they keep giving them to me. And I don't feel like telling them no, because it is food. It's food that'll last forever, and it's pointless for me. I don't throw it away. But the second bucket is down here under my steps in this little door here. And at one time I had that whole little room filled with buckets of food. It's like that's where the cornmeal was, and then there was 2 or 3, like a spare flour, spare rice, spare sugar. Sugar will not fit under my cabinet, so I put the sugar down there in that little room. So here we go. I'm going to show you the few things I keep out here that are like food storage system stuff. This is probably the only real food down here, and that is the popcorn. Now, like I said, I used to keep a big old 25 or 40 pound sack of it, but currently this is what I'm using. Now, I recently acquired these 2 bags, but rather than put them in here, I keep them separate because, like I said, corn has a issue with weevils, and so I do kind of carefully make sure that I do not fail to rotate. You know, rotating is when you take the oldest stuff and you put it to the front where you can use it, and you put your newest stuff to the back. And so I don't want to mix my brand new popcorn with the older popcorn. I want to kind of go through it and get it out of here. That way I can clean out the bucket and put the newer popcorn in there. Now over here is mostly just drinks. And a lot of this stuff probably needs to be thrown away. My wife has never been a big fan of Kool-Aid. I have. You know, when I was working in the wood, I would drink gallons of Gatorade because I sweat profusely. And so I've got this Gatorade, and I've got other things that are full of sugar to give me energy while I'm working in the woods. And if I ever do get back out in the woods, I will go back to drinking that, because even though I'm a diabetic and I shouldn't drink that, I find that if I stay hard at work all day, my sugar is not affected. I can just guzzle sugar if I need to, and I'll be okay. I also like to keep this fake coffee instant coffee. I love instant coffee better than I like real coffee, but it's so expensive that, I try to just drink real coffee all the time. The only time that I'll drink instant coffee is like late at night when I don't want to make a pot of coffee, because I usually have my pot set up to make coffee in the morning. But we've also got this, which my wife likes. We've got the chocolate, and we've got the strawberry, and we've got artificial tea. Usually we just make these bags of tea because it's cheaper. But when we don't have that, then of course we use this. Now down here I've got stuff this is really, really old too. It may be that when I go to use it, it's not going to be useful. But if you're a healthy person, you don't have to stick to a sugar-free diet, probably a good idea to have a lot of Kool-Aid-like stuff, because sugar is energy, it is calories. And that's kind of what I was thinking when I put this up here. Now I keep my coffee up here, but I've also got this daily fiber. And I think that's like the name brand stuff is called maybe Metamucil or something like that. It's some kind of pods off of some kind of plant that when they get wet, they swell up. And it makes it kind of like a shake. This stuff is really good because it tastes like that, but has no sugar in it, so I can get away with drinking that. On a day when I want a shake, I can have that old people stuff, whatever it is. This freezer was given to me when my uncle died. It was his freezer, and nobody else wanted it. And I really didn't want it because I didn't need to have a separate freezer running. But I got to thinking about it. It's very difficult to put 5-gallon buckets in your household freezer. You pretty much are stuck having to put, like if you buy a bag of flour, you have to kind of move everything around, put a bag of flour in there, and then transfer it to a bucket later, which is about what I'm about to do. But with one of these, you can just I think you can stack 2 or 3 buckets in here and get away with it, and leave them for 2 or 3 days, and that kills all of the weevil moths. Not the weevils. It doesn't kill the beetle weevils, but it kills the moth weevils, and what are called weavers. So here we go. And this is going to take a couple of buckets. Long grain and wild rice, and normally a 5-gallon bucket will hold just about 25 pounds of any kind of dry goods, because even though they're all shaped different, they take up different amount of space, it just seems that a 5-gallon bucket normally works out for 25 pounds of stuff. A really important thing to remember is that anything that's cold will develop condensation on it, no matter what you do, because the air holds a certain amount of water, and that water will collect anywhere that it's cooled down to the point where it's no longer in vapor form. So I never ever will transfer any kind of a bag of cold anything into one of these buckets unless the air conditioner's running or the heater's running or something, because that kind of keeps the humidity down. You notice the fan is still spinning a little bit. It's because I just turned it off. You don't want air blowing over your ice cold rice while you're pouring it into a bucket. Now the obvious solution is to put this stuff in the bucket first and then freeze it. But even still, when you take it out, a lot of humidity will get in there. So that's the best way. The best way is to simply put it in the bucket first. I'm just showing you this because I want it to kind of, for people that don't have a freezer that a bucket will fit in, like if you're putting this in your regular freezer, you have to put it in the bag. So here we go. We're going to show you how to transfer that as efficiently as possible without getting it all wet. First thing I'm going to do is transfer the leftover rice into this. This is specifically made for rice. So if you're cooking rice, you just pour it into this, which is a cup. And but I got a rice cooker, and the measuring cup from a rice cooker is not the same size as this. And so rather than memorize what that is, I keep this separate. I absolutely don't like dealing with large quantities of stuff. And like I said, this is 50 pounds. And so there's no way in the world I'd ever be able to pour this in. So I have to use a scoop, and it takes forever. But when I get it about halfway, and I can pick the last half up and put it in the bucket. Now, immediately, you can't see that probably, but this bag is soaking wet because the humidity in here is collecting on it. And I can promise you that's happening to every grain of rice in here to some extent. After I get this in my bucket, I'll put the lid on it to keep as much humidity off as possible, and I'll actually seal the lid. And wait for the temperature to match the room temperature. Once this rice gets to room temperature, what I'll do is I'll turn the ceiling fan back on, so that way any humidity that has accumulated on the rice will dry off, and it will. And then it's ready for storage. All right, now it's time to pour the last little bit in my second bucket. So, I've got as much rice as possible in this bucket that has rice written on it. And I'm going to put that under the stairs for safekeeping, because that one I'm going to keep sealed up. And this one is just going to be sitting in there loose that I can use. When I get this emptied, then I can move this in there. With rice, even though you fill one all the way up to the tippy top, the way rice stacks, which is very neatly, you're only going to get this much in your second bucket. Now, the only reason I have the ceiling fan back on is because I like having the ceiling fan on. But for our purposes, having a ceiling fan on these 2 buckets of ice-cold rice will help to equalize the temperature of the rice with the temperature in the room. Because once you do that, you can take the lid off, turn on the fan, and in a very short amount of time, maybe 2 hours, you can put the lid back on, because, you know, it'll have dried up. That's all it takes to... What little bit of moisture has accumulated on my rice will have dried off by the time it's been sitting under the fan for a couple of hours. Well, that's pretty much it for my food system storage videos. I'm not going to show you what's in the fridge and the freezer, because that hasn't really got anything to do with survival or prepping or even really just being a human being. Because if you've got to have food, if you have food that requires electricity, I don't know. I would really, if I lived by myself and I didn't have to worry about anybody else, I wouldn't even have a refrigerator for anything, because I just don't need it. Maybe have one small one, but right now I've got 2 refrigerators and that freezer that I don't use. This is what my cabinets look like. From one end to the other, top and bottom. That's pretty much it. The drawers have other things in them, like one drawer is just matches and lighters. Another drawer is just batteries. And these are like regular batteries, and we try to use those sometimes. I have mostly rechargeables for everything in this house, and I use those all the time because of my camera equipment, audio equipment, which all requires batteries. You know, there's a lot of things in this house that require batteries, so I use rechargeables. But I've also got Ziploc bags and string and light bulbs and all that in those drawers, along with my cooking utensils and eating utensils. So that's everything that's in here. I hope you'll come in and watch again next week when I do one of these videos. Perhaps it'll be about my trade goods, prepper trade goods, basically alcohol, or my medical cabinet. I've got, you know, especially now that I've gotten older, medicine seems to be a big deal. And so, whereas in the past I would have had things like rubbing alcohol and Band-Aids, now I've got a whole pile of stuff to show you. And so we'll do that in a future video. As always, thank you for watching, and if you do not wish to survive, don't listen to me.